we have only, we've only got a certain amount of voice here, and we need people on board to back us. So we really wanted to nurture the grassroots activism side of it, but we also wanted to be a credible voice at national level. So that's kind of our two aims when we launched. We launched back in June 2019. It was only a few months ago. It feels like a lifetime ago to me. And we pretty much exploded onto the sea with the Munro Bergdorf. So just to prove really how that went. So this is how it started. So look, 7th of June. How do we feel about just, breaking or starting with the Munro Bergdorf, the NSPCC scandal? Yeah, we could do that. We could put an open letter out. We could challenge the NSPCC, and then 4 hours later, everything had gone mad, and we thought, right, we're going to have to put our lives on hold for a little while here because there was so much engagement with this. Of course, then immediately, you're right wing, you're anti, trans, we don't know who you are, they're just some loons in basements, they're funded by the right wing, all of those accusations started pretty much immediately, really, and have continued. 5 months on, we've got, really great following. A lot of the work we've done is about, carrying on challenging guidelines, and as I said, one of the purposes of what we're doing is really being a credible voice at a national level. So we have a campaign going at the minute about challenging the WHRC on their leaked guidelines. Now, we'd written to them before the draft guidelines even came out, with a letter signed by probably about 200 people, and we'd garnered those names without having to go out via social media. That was just through connections we'd known. So we are continuing to challenge the WHRC. We find that we are really concerned about their guidelines because a number of schools we've talked to, including my daughter's schools, are waiting for this guidelines to come out because then they can use that to say the WHRC has said this, so therefore we're going to cover we're going to follow what their advice has been. We've also done other things, so our sort of focus has been challenging how gender identity impacts safeguarding, but also we've been involved in the Warwickshire County Council Respect Yourself website, and we work with Conf there about the sexualisation of children and the acceptance of pornography. So that's just been a couple of our campaigns. We're managed by a small group, strategic group. We are, as I say, we're non-political, we're non-religious, we're not aligned with any organisation. We've had to kind of come up with this really quickly because when we formed back in June, we just said, oh, okay, we'll just form and we'll see how it goes. So, we're really clear that we don't work with other organisations and that we are keeping our sort of strategic group fairly small because we find that we can get decisions made really quickly. But we are supported by an action group of parents, professionals. We have no funding or volunteers, and as I say, part of our remit is to really nurture this grassroots activism. We can't manage it, we can't do it ourselves, and what we want to do is provide a space really for people to come together, form groups, get together and start to challenge their LEAs and challenge their schools. And what we're hoping to do is provide resources to allow people to do that. So this is all about our mission really. So we want to put safeguarding at the heart of everything we do. We are saying that so many of the policies that exist in our schools really contradict the really important safeguarding frameworks that have been put in place. We want to be credible, so everything we put out, we have a lot of support behind the scenes with solicitors and lawyers. We have safeguarding leads, we have people with years and years experience in safeguarding and the law that really back what we do. So everything we put out is credible, it's evidence-based, puts the child at the heart of it, not just the transgender identified child, but all children at the heart of what we do. So yeah, safeguarding first is our motto. So these are some of our current campaigns. Lots of the details of these are on our website. So the EHRC campaign is really ongoing. I can't remember whether we've had a response. We've had one response. Do we have another? Just one response from EHRC so far. We did write to GIDS. We never had a response from them. I think we published that on our website. Monday, that's coming Monday. So the letter we wrote to them will be published on Monday. We decided not to publish that as an open letter straight away because we felt that they deserved the right of reply to us, but they didn't reply, didn't even acknowledge receipt, although we sent it recorded delivery, so we know they received it. We have a plethora of templates, letters, fact sheets, other resources. This is kind of really playing to the fact that we want people to use our resources and use them to challenge their schools. We've had a lot of decent coverage in national papers, and we have a number of very sympathetic journalists who are keen to work with us. We have been distributing Helen Saxby's excellent children's rights impact assessment. Now, this is based on the All Sorts guidance, but given the fact that most guidance is based on the All Sorts guidance, it's pretty relevant. We sent that to every safeguarding board in the country, no response. Local action, challenging policy and RSC as well. So that's just a number of, probably missed some things out, but that's essentially the big campaigns that we're working on. Okay. So that's just a bit of background about us because, you know, although we're talking about our red flags, I very much realised that there may be some people in the room who didn't really know about us. We have been sort of fairly, although we've been very visible on social media, in terms of the personalities behind it, we have deliberately been fairly invisible for reasons why I'm sure you realise. I showed my naivety right at the beginning when my name seemed to appear on the Munro-Bergdorf letter, and within just a few hours, my name and my job and my company job, my profile from my work, my biography from my work was plastered all over the internet within a very short amount of time. I was supposed to be chairing an event for my day job on that day, and I was just desperately trying to close down all my social media and hadn't quite realised how much you're putting yourself out there. So we've taken a low profile personally, but we hope that we've got a pretty decent profile nationally. So now you know that there is a real face behind the organisation. So our red flags document, we decided that what we needed to do is have a framework and have a document for parents and for schools to use, because what people were saying to us, what parents were saying to us is, I don't know how to challenge this. The school is saying they're relying on county council guidelines. We know it's wrong, we feel it's wrong, but we've got nothing to back up why it's wrong. So we spent a significant amount of time. When I say we, I didn't actually write this document. My colleagues from Safe Schools Alliance put an awful lot of time. So I'm just presenting their work today, really. They put an awful lot of time developing this, getting it checked, making sure it was authoritative. So this is really essentially, this is for people to use to go and challenge their schools. It is also for schools to use when they're looking at policy to make sure that their policy is meeting equality, the Equality Act, and also putting out there that they need to be aware of all of the safeguarding framework that we have in place. So what I've done here, there's no time to take you through the document in a great amount of detail. So what I've asked to do is for this document to be linked to on the page along with my slides. So I've really just taken the highlights here, and I'll just spend a few minutes just going through what we think the 10 policy red flags are. And I've got it up here just in case I miss anything. So the first one, obviously, is only citing lobby groups as a source of expertise. So we see this a lot, your heart sinks because Stonewall's name is going to be on it somewhere, and you think, right, okay, so the whole point is that we need to be pointing out to schools that any guidelines they get from anyone needs to be from credible, independent organisations who understand about safeguarding and who are not political lobby groups. Now that I recognise that this is a really steep hill to climb because Stonewall is so embedded. You talk to people outside of this community and this environment. I was talking to a friend last week about it. His company is Stonewall Champion. Couldn't understand what the problems were. Stonewall, it's outside of this community already and consistently have the credibility. So you're starting from quite a low base, but having to educate people about why Stonewall essentially write your policy and your education resources isn't a good idea. So our documentation helps with that, is pointing out schools' responsibility to be working with people who understand safeguarding, and Stonewall do not understand safeguarding. Referring to gender as a protected characteristic, so essentially anywhere you see, I've seen it in schools' policies that they don't have sex and they have gender listed as a protected characteristic. We all know why, you shouldn't be having gender. It doesn't comply with the Equality Act, it conflates the issues, it allows sexism to kind of seep into our policies. So referring to gender as a protected characteristic, a big red flag. Okay, not mentioning equality impact assessments. I think this is where we can make some ground in schools. It's certainly how we managed to get my daughter's trans inclusion policy guidelines taken down within about 45 minutes of sending an email. So they're down. They're not there anymore because we pointed out to the head teacher and the executive head of the Multi-Academy Trust that actually they were legally liable, and we asked to see their equality impact assessment, and they said, we haven't done the equality impact assessment. We've used the council's guidelines, haven't the council done the equality impact assessment? Well, of course, the council's argument is that no, we don't need to have done one, we're just issuing guidelines. It's the school's responsibility to do the equality impact assessment. When we asked Oxford whether they'd made that really clear to all the schools that were using their guidelines, they failed to respond to that question, which of course is no, they hadn't. And so, schools are, they're busy places, they're suffering funding cuts, they haven't got enough staff. They see something on a council website and they trust that the council have done the right thing. So we also need to be pointing out to schools that actually it's not the council who are going to be liable the minute something happens. They're going to be liable, it's the head teacher's going to be liable, the governing body are going to be liable. So I think, going back to the schools, and this is why it's really important we have people on the ground actually doing things and challenging schools and writing to schools and joining clubs to do the same thing, is actually, I think, we can make ground on the equality impact assessment. And essentially schools, any policy schools put in place, they have to make sure that that policy doesn't impact anyone within any of the protected characteristics. So you point out that the removal of single-sex spaces not only impacts girls on the protected characteristic of sex, but it may impact people on the protected characteristic of religion as well. So actually pointing out how those policies impact on other groups and asking to see the assessments that they've done. And then, going back to Helen's guidelines, having a look and then taking out from Helen's impact assessment the one she did and pointing out where they're failing to meet that as well. So I think this is where we can probably make some ground, because actually you can't argue with this. This is their legal responsibility to do it. Advocating confidentiality for trans-identified pupils. Well, massive safeguarding red flag there. There's no framework that exists in schools that doesn't allow teachers to discuss any safeguarding issues they have with other professionals and with families as well. So there's frameworks in place, and what these guidelines are doing is basically overriding those guidelines. So it's referring back, and often what you will find, and what we found again in my daughter's school, is that we found that they had the confidentiality clause in their guidelines, and then on the safeguarding policy, it completely contradicted. So, going back to do the work to highlight on their safeguarding policy where their safeguarding policy trumps, where their safeguarding policy is contradicting. And essentially, we need to get back to the point that safeguarding trumps everything, and at the moment, as we know, safeguarding is being overridden. So advocating confidentiality is a massive red flag there, and actually going back to the safeguarding policy is where you can win. Promoting mixed sex or gender neutral toilets. Now, a lot of the ways that schools are trying to get around this problem is just saying, okay, well, we'll just make everything gender neutral. Now, of course, that just doesn't work. That just doesn't work for teenage girls. It really doesn't work for teenage boys either, who wants to be sharing their changing facilities with people of the opposite sex. Now, there are ways that schools can accommodate trans-identified pupils, and that is by having kind of both. So they maintain the single-sex facilities, but they have a fixed floor-to-ceiling kind of stall arrangement for people who don't want to use the facilities of either sex. The guidelines, the all sorts guidelines and so on, will say that there is provision in the law for schools not to have to follow the single-sex provision. Well, we know there's not, and so our red flags document will actually have some wording where you can go back to schools and point out where the law allows them to provide single-sex facilities. Because I think for a lot of schools, and I know this is probably true of my daughter's school, because to be honest with you, they have been quite open to talking to me, and I think a lot of schools, they feel in a really difficult position. They don't want to be sued by any families. They want to be meeting the law. So I think if you approach them in the right way with the right documentation, you know, with a little bit of a threat in there as well about them breaking the law and being legally liable, but you can say that with a smile on your face and saying, actually, here's something else that can actually help you meet the needs of all of your pupils, not just one group. And it's all about getting this sense over that, you know, one protected characteristic does not trump another. The fact is that gender isn't a protected characteristic anyway. So, you know, it's trying to get over that concept as well as there's no case of one trumping the other. So, sorry, I've got to. Right, oh, this is a biggie, isn't it? Using emotive suicide stats to put pressure on schools. So, you know, that's again what we're finding a lot. We go talk to the deputy head of my daughter's school, and one of the first things he said is, well, you know, we're worried about you know, the suicide statistics for trans-identified pupils. When we pointed out what the research was that those statistics were based on, he was quite horrified because, again, they've come from Stonewall, and Stonewall can be trusted because they're a really decent organisation, and why would they lie to us, and so on and so forth. So pointing out actually where those statistics come from, alongside pointing out that they're deeply, deeply being irresponsible by including them anyway. You know, the Samaritans have real strict guidelines on what we do about reporting and using suicide statistics. We know for young people, it's often multifactorial why they're feeling so desperate and so suicidal, and to be using these statistics in this way to put pressure on schools to make them feel bad is, you know, again, and again, that is overriding all the safeguarding criteria as well. So our documentation has a way that you can challenge when you see that in any school guidelines. That's how you can challenge. Suggesting that all gender non-conformity indicates a child is trans. In the All Sorts guidelines, teachers are encouraged to look out in pre-verbal children for gender non-conforming behaviour, and not only to look out for this, but to flag it. So teachers are expected to flag, you know, when children before their ages 5, 4 are showing gender non-conforming behaviour, what are they actually supposed to be doing with that information? So, I mean, deeply, deeply sexist, and it's you know, incredible that they are actually even ever in policies, but they are. Making scientifically inaccurate assertions around biology, you know, assigned sex assigned at birth. It contradicts the science curriculum, for a start. We've had a situation again in my daughter's school where I asked to see the Year 9 RSC curriculum because I saw they had a session on sexuality and gender identity. So I thought, right, here we go. I've been having this conversation with them for 18 months now. So, of course, we looked. I thought they'd got rid of it last year, but they hadn't. And, you know, all over it is sex is assigned at birth. So I asked them, because science teachers sometimes deliver the PSHE curriculum, like what science teacher is actually going to be able to deliver that lesson with their hand on heart saying your sex is assigned at birth? I actually asked the teacher who sent it to me, would you be happy teaching that? You know it's nonsense. I'm still waiting an answer, but we'll carry on plugging on. And isn't it exhausting having to keep writing these letters and ask people to do things that, you know, we must. So making scientifically inaccurate assertions regarding gender, regarding biology, again, that is a definite red flag. And schools need to understand that that's a red flag and why. Delivering sessions to pupils without school staff present. Oh, you're busy teachers, you don't need to be there. We'll come in, we're the experts, we know all about this, you know. For a lot of schools, box ticked, right, got that covered in my curriculum, they can come in, we get some PD time, you know, we can go and mark our books. Again, it's Stonewall, they're really trusted, or Stonewall have written those resources, or Stonewall have trained those people. Again, massive safeguarding no-no. You don't have anyone in your school talking to your pupils without a staff member present. You don't allow them in before you've seen any of their materials, and you allow those materials to be available to all parents. And you have a right as a parent to see those materials and challenge those. Now, of course, everything's changing come 2020, and we will be doing more work on our position on RSE, sex education, and you know what parents can do about that. We know things are changing, and you know it's getting harder for parents to have a say, which is why, leading back to the fact that we must all have a voice in this and start really speaking out. And then last one, neglecting to disclose the negative side effects of transition. I saw a policy the other day. It was actually worse than the All Sorts guidelines, and I can't remember where it was from now, but it came into us in our task force, our action group. And actually, rather than just saying, well, some girls decide to bind their breasts and schools should facilitate this, which is bad enough, again, massive safeguarding red flag. You are facilitating self-harm in your school under the guise of inclusion and being supportive. It went one further, it went a step further than that to say that this school should be suggesting that girls might like to bind their breasts because it helps alleviate their dysphoria. So, and these are in schools. So again, go back to the safeguarding principles. How can that ever get past a safeguarding lead in any school? So there are 10 red flags. Loads and loads more details on them on our website. Please download them, please use them, please send them to your schools, please share them everywhere you can. It is one of our most popular fact sheets that we've produced. So what can you do? So use our template letter to write to the school, include the head teacher, the chair of governors, the safeguarding lead. Use our document to back up. It's much easier if you've got something there. It's very hard when somebody's in front of you sometimes to kind of find the facts or find the argument. If you've got that document in front of you, it makes it all so much easier. Ask to see their impact assessment. Well, they won't have one. Highly unlikely for them to have done one. So again, that may even just shut the discussion down straight away. Share the Children's Rights Impact Assessment written by Helen Saxby. I think it's available on the Transgender website. Even if it's not by All Sorts, you can guarantee that essentially the guidance is pretty much the same, whoever's name's on the sheet. Ask for a meeting, print off the red flags document, take it with you, have that as backup. I had this bullet point say take a friend, and they had told me I had to change it because it just looked a bit trite. But for increased impact, take a fellow parent with you. This is what I found in Oxford. I have to say, I don't think if it had been for the fact that I wasn't doing this with my friend Melissa, I think it would have been much harder because you know you're right, you've got that backup. If you can form a real life group, join ours online. Come and join us. We may have people in your area that we can put you in touch with. And I do think there's nothing like actually getting a face-to-face with somebody as well, if you can, to really help you do that. Because sometimes it can feel a very lonely place, can't it, when you just feel like you're the only lone voice. Well, you're not the only lone voice. There's lots of us who feel the same way. So, basically join a bigger gang. Point out their legal obligations and ask for a reasoned response to your objections. We're waiting 9 months now from Oxfordshire County Council for a reasoned response to our objections. They're just telling us their guidelines do not break any safeguarding framework or principles, and that's that, and they're the experts and they should know. Obviously, we're not going to give up on that, but it makes it very, very difficult. So ask for a reasoned response, and actually what I would say is make your letters to them fairly short, and make your letters to the point, and make sure you are asking questions for them to answer. Don't let them get out of it by just commenting on your email. You have questions that you need answers to. And don't give up until you get them, and keep carrying on. And if you don't get satisfactory answers, please pursue a formal complaint. Every school should have a school's complaints procedure on their website, so follow that formal complaints process. And don't give up. This is what we say to ourselves. We're 5 months into Safe Schools Alliance, and our things on our to-do list just keeps growing and growing, and we are essentially saying, I know, I'm saying time, don't give up. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm on my last slide, I promise. And this is just really reiterating what I've said all along. So find out what the policy is in your school, talk to the safeguarding lead. I've found that when I've talked to safeguarding leads, off the record as such, they totally get it and they're with us. They just are finding it hard to have a voice. So get them on side, get them to join groups, even if they want to join in a secret name or something, get them on side, because actually they could be a real ally to helping you get what you want, because they've got their jobs at risk, and it is obviously very difficult for them sometimes to speak out. But I find that safeguarding leads often, they really know the school, they just want some help in putting pressure on their bosses, essentially. So share our posts, follow us, please use our resources. A lot of time, love, care and attention goes into producing them. Talk to other parents and unfortunately be prepared to write an awful lot of letters. That's it. That's all.
Okay, we've got 15 minutes for questions. Thank you. I've got a question at the moment. The first question is, do you think paper letters are better than emails? We talk about letters.
Yes, actual letters. I mean, we do emails, but we find that actual letters are more
actual
likely.
Physical things.
Actual
on
physical letters.
Desk. Yeah, that is my belief, but I'm told I'm a bit old.
And back it up with an email. Did you see the letter I sent you? You know, back it up with an email. Can you confirm you received my letter, please? I mean, you've got to develop a thick skin. You know, you've got to not care that you're becoming basically a complete pain.
And the comment is kind of coming from this biologist, please can we not say sex is determined at conception? It's a really old term. We only ever saw fertilization in the 1880s, and that was in a marine worm. We only saw human eggs in about the 50s. So can we please say, all of us, sex is determined at fertilization? Everybody knows what sperm gets in the egg. All right? Thank you.
Hi. First of all, thank you, Tracy. That's brilliant. But my concern, as far as schools are concerned, is very specific. I'm an autistic woman. I have an autistic daughter. This is something that is massively affecting the autistic community, particularly autistic girls. 48% of all the referrals to the Tavistock show autistic traits. 35% of them are moderate to severe. They're mostly girls. My daughter, she's 13, she's going through puberty, she cannot cope with it. She came home and said, in the middle of an argument, well, why can't I just take those blocker drugs?
Right.
And I'm just, whoa, where did that come from? And she looked at me as if I was slightly thick and just said, everyone knows about that. Because they do, and teachers, I think, have no idea what their kids are talking about in the playground. And I've looked at every single piece of school's guidance. The only reference to autism is to make sure that you explain their transition options more clearly, because it's a communication issue. None of them acknowledge the massive impact on the autistic community, and it's really, really frightening. And I really, really want to do something about it, because it's a really, really huge issue, and it's just totally being ignored. And the other thing, sorry, very briefly, you were talking about predictive characteristics. Most kids who are being supported in school around trans are not in an individual box. They're a Venn diagram of characteristics. They'll be protected under sex, they'll be protected under disability, they'll be protected under gender reassignment, and there is nothing that is showing schools how to actually support and unpick those different areas.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that, and thank you ever so much for your comments. I mean, we do actually in our red flags document, and I failed to say it, under the, talking about the fact that, not being scientifically correct is actually, and I think it's in our red flags document, that particularly for people on the autistic spectrum, they just cannot cope with the sort of illogic of this. And actually it's really, really damaging to them in particular. So we have definitely recognised that. I mean, are you part of our group? Would you like to join our group? So we'll come and talk to us, and you are part of our group. Oh, you are part of our group. Okay, all right. Well, that's great.
It's kind of more of a sort of point of. So one of the things that concerns me as a parent and a doctor and a school member as well is the issue that these diagnoses of gender dysphoria are being made by teachers. And so the diagnosis is being made and the treatment is actually being implemented before anyone gets anywhere near any kind of medical person whatsoever. And that's where your stuff is so key. So just keep going.
Can I just, excellent. Can I just say that for anybody who's anxious to ask a question that they're being filmed, the questions are not being filmed, so don't worry about that.
This was just a question about your connections or actions or planned actions around the teaching unions.
Yes.
So
Yeah, we
just
have.
passage, Jenny, just
Yeah, we do. We have that, as I say. I mean, actually, I should have probably put that on our list of our campaigns. We've written to the unions. I don't think we've had a response.
it's very recent.
It's quite recent, yeah. It's kind of, it's on our list, and actually I think some of the things we are trying to do is encourage, you know, other people who will support us to sort of help us with that as well. But we do have a letter that we've written to one of the or a couple of the teaching unions. We haven't shared it because, again, what we'd like to do is write to people and give them a chance to respond before we share things openly. But yeah, it's definitely on our list, as is Ofsted actually, and a number of other organisations.
Can I ask a question that's going to be uncomfortable? We know that those who have gender dysphoria and persist into adulthood and seek castration or whatever are, in some cases, and I'm sorry to say that I know this from my personal exposure to this issue, they've been subject to sexual abuse or trauma of some sort. So the uncomfortable fact is that if you look more closely at some of the genuinely trans kids, you're going to uncover a really nasty can of worms.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw recently a post that questioned that some police forces have, I mean, you might not know the answers, but some police forces actually subscribe to Stonewall each month. Is that happening with councils?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So,
couldn't really believe it. I thought someone was joking.
well, so in Oxfordshire, and this is the point that we've made to Oxfordshire, is that they came top in this. I can't remember what their award was, but the Stonewall Equality Award or their Education Award or so on. And when we pointed out to the chair of the safeguarding committee there, who is supposedly independent but actually works for Bernardo's, so of course he's captured anyway. When we pointed out that political allegiances within the council were getting in the way of them actually approaching this from a safeguarding point of view, they didn't even understand the point we were making. Well, I think deliberately so, not understanding the point we were making. But, you know, when we pointed out that Stonewall are campaigning to remove sex as a protected characteristic and so on and so forth, they just couldn't make those connections at all. So yeah, I mean, so many councils are Stonewall champions. So Oxfordshire, that's why we know we've got a work cut out in Oxfordshire.
It's not very different breeds of people that take it on board.
Yeah.
It's a total dissonance, totally different mindset. I
Yeah.
can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, me again, teacher from Birmingham. Two comments. First of all, I had a very similar fight with my daughter's school as that you've had in yours, with a company called Diversity Role Models, and they're role models for an all-girls school of year 8 and 9, with 2 gay men, 1 lesbian and a trans woman. So I went in and said, how are these role models for girls? If you have to include transgender, why is it not a trans man that's there? Why is it a trans woman? I questioned some of the language. And actually, I have to be fair to the safeguarding lead. Again, I think she was actually geared up for me to come in and be really homophobic, I think. And I was like, no, I don't have an issue with the LGB at all. It's the T that's the problem. And actually, I've got a concession, yay, that they have agreed that in year 7, before they have anything about transgenderism, they will do a lot of work highlighting the differences between sexuality and identity.
Oh, brilliant.
Yay! And my second point, because we're going back to the unions, I'm a trade union rep for the NEU, and in Birmingham we're dealing with the No Outsiders programme.
Of course, yeah.
And I went to a meeting with the NEU recently called Teaching Equality in the Curriculum, and it was basically just a public service broadcast for the No Outsiders programme. I was a lone voice in trying to criticise it, and in the end I had to give up because I was being shouted down by so many people. and being called all sorts of horrific names. I mean, I had to just stop talking. But I'm trying to get something together to tackle the unions. So if I can in any way, shape or form help, I would be very, very grateful.
So on that note, please get in contact with us and we can talk about how we do that, but that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to see this information. I experienced recently getting a letter from my children's primary school saying we're about to start rolling out this programme. There were 5 bullet points about what it contains. I wrote back saying, oh, I'd love to see the curriculum and reading list. I got, well, we're not allowed to share that. Why do you want to know? So I'm just like, well, I wonder if you know what my legal rights are on that point and also how I can negotiate it. Especially because in my school there's quite a lot of African evangelical Christians who I know from the playground are worried about the LGBT stuff. Obviously, I want to distinguish myself from them, so it's very difficult.
Yes. Well, I think you have a right to see it, and I would take that to the governors if that's the answer that you've had from have you had that answer from, who have you had the answer from?
From the teacher in charge of
Right, I'll just take it further, take it to the head, take it to the governors, just keep pressing, you should be able to see that.
So there's no reason why I should have to make an FOR request?
Shouldn't have to, no, they should share that with you.
If you threaten to make a formal complaint, put your issues in an email. Sorry, this is just...
No, please do,
Put
please
your
do.
issues in an email before the appointment. Say, this is my issues and what I need answers to. Arrange a meeting, but also put in your email, if I'm not satisfied with the outcome of the meeting, I will be making a formal complaint. And they soon gets their arses in gear, to be fair to them.
Thank you.
What they don't want is a formal complaint to governors and to Ofsted. So,
hello, yes. I'm a head of PSHE, so I'm in charge of implementing the RSE policy in my school. And of course, when I was first starting, so I've been leading for 10 years now, of course I was including trans because I felt, like you were saying, it's all about being inclusive and tolerant and kind and all those things. And I became more and more alarmed, and I must say I'm so disappointed about Stonewall because in the past they were a great ally, and when I was tackling, because to be honest, homophobia is still probably one of the biggest issues amongst parents, so they used to be an amazing ally, but they've chosen to dump LGB and just concentrate on it, especially lesbians. That's one of the main things, because the deep misogyny that is going on here. You know, I teach in a girls' school. I'm really concerned that they have, you know, that actually feminism and actually their power is enhanced and not defined by gender stereotyping, all that, you know, kind of stuff. So I find that, but I think as parents, talk to your PSHE teacher, talk to the people who are doing this, and of course, it is still your right to withdraw your child from RSE lessons. Of course, I'm not advocating that because I want everybody to be involved, but if you deeply feel that what is happening is wrong, then that is still your right to do that, and it will still be your right in 2020. So I think a dialogue between yes, it's still, the government has still put in that it's going to be statutory, but there will still be, when it's the RSE part, a right for parents to withdraw. Don't necessarily always agree with that, but sometimes it's rather what you were saying about, you know, homophobia rather than talking. And the whole thing, the whole dialogue of turfs and all this sort of stuff has polarised us, hasn't it?
Absolutely, so. Yeah. And I think just on that point about misogyny, so I had the same conversation with, my daughter goes to an all-girls school too, and I had the same conversation with the head there by saying, you know, you're head of a girls' school and you don't realise how misogynistic you are being, and he couldn't see it. He just couldn't see it until we pointed it out to him.
Sorry, I'm going to have to draw to a close. Sorry?
Can I just say that you will retain the right to remove children from sex education will continue, but there will not be a right, it's very specific in the guidance, to remove children from relationships education, which does not involve sex education. So for younger children, there won't be a right necessarily to remove them from the teaching about gender identity that's going on in schools.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Okay, there are so many questions and so much discussion to have. We will have it in the plenary. Okay, can I just say apologies to Stephanie. I thought her session was is coming now. It's coming straight after lunch. We have an hour for lunch, and I'm afraid we don't provide it, but there are many venues around here. And
the venues.
okay. Someone is going to say what the venues are.
Yeah.
And thank you very much to Tracy.